The Dalai Lama said, "When you talk, you're only repeating what you know, but when you listen, you may learn something new." She's a lecturer, researcher, consultant, the UCLA Adjunct Professor of Social Welfare, and an expert on gangs. With us today, Jorja Leap, AKA Little Mama.
Yes.
You can't escape that nickname.
No.
I mentioned that you're an expert on gangs. The word gang has a negative connotation in terms of how we interpret crime, et cetera, but is it really, is that a fair definition?
Defining a gang is you're literally, I hate to use these words, it's a moving target. And it depends who you're talking to. If you talk to a police officer, they say it's 3 or more people, conspiring to commit crime, part of a criminal enterprise. I think I have a much looser definition. And I would say it's a group of people with shared ages and interests who often, not always, participate in activities that may be illegal. And by the way, I have a whole continuum. So that can include a young black man or a young Latinx, or it can include a member of law enforcement. Because you want to talk about a group of people that gather together and sometimes are engaged in illegal activities, it fits a lot of groups. So I tend to have that kind of looser understanding. And then when you talk about a gang, you'll talk about tattoos and ideas of respect and honor. But it's tricky. It's really tricky.
In your background and in your history, you spent time in Bosnia and Kosovo. So what was it there what did you learn and what was happening there?
In both those areas, there had been blood feuds that were going on for generations that were exactly like gang wars. What was once Yugoslavia, Serbia, Bosnia, Kosovo, these were feuds that had gone on for centuries. A man talked to me about one of his cousins who was killed by an Albanian. He was Serbian. My cousin was killed by an Albanian. I hate all Albanians. And I went, huh? When did that happen? And he said, straight-faced, in 1847. So it was a cousin he never knew, and yet he carried on this blood feud. These were feuds that lived through the generations. And what we've been able to do with gangs is to break some of those cycles before they go through the generations. And the second thing I learned is just how delicate the process of post-war reconciliation was. It was sort of like a whole society was trying to re-enter life and have a peaceful life after war. It was re-entry on steroids. For many years, I did work and continue to do support and training for former military special operations personnel who are leaving the Navy SEALs or leaving the Rangers. And these individuals, when they re-enter mainstream society, share a lot of the same struggles that gang members do.
I've heard that actually.
They do. And when I was first approached by the people that wanted to work with these heroes of the military, I said, "Why do you want me? I work with gangs." And they said, "Because it's very similar." I'm not saying, the Navy SEALs are like gang members. That's not it.
Right.
But the similarities and what they struggle with are stunning. They're unbelievable.
You were taken under the wing by a man named Mike Cummings. What did he offer to you that allowed you to be welcomed into an arena that may not have normally welcomed you?
Oh, it absolutely would not have welcomed me. I'm I'm so clearly an outsider. I met Elder Cummings, Big Mike, at a gang conference. He said, "Want to come with me?" And I said, "Let's go." And he and I went outside and started talking. And we made a plan to meet in Watts a week later. And I stood by him while he was involved in his Safe Passages program, making sure little kids going in and out of school were not accosted by bigger kids, checking their bags, taking things away from them. And I literally glued myself to his side and never left. And he is one of the people, along with Father Greg, along with people at Homeboy Industries, He is a person who has given me an education that has exceeded anything I could have achieved from a book, from a study. I can't begin to tell you. To this day, he is someone I listen to, I ask, I trust. He's brilliant. He started schooling me in who was in a gang, how you could tell who was really dangerous, who was playing, who was an associate, who was mentally ill. He literally gave me the understanding that only someone who was of the community, part of things. He also differentiated for me people who were drug dealers from people who were gang members. He taught me so much. I did have a previous reputation as a social worker. There were people in the streets who knew me. That helped. But there was a period where I was very clear people weren't going to tell me anything. And I finally knew things were better, not because people began to divulge things, because they didn't. They didn't suddenly go, okay, she's fine, check. Now we're going to tell her everything. They're not. They started to ask me for help.
Oh.
The number one request was lawyers. Someone got locked up, someone was here, someone was there, and so I would connect them. Then it became reentry. My brother's getting out, women would say my husband's getting out. And because I began to connect them with resources, and because I was very tied and remain tied to Homeboy Industries and Father Greg, that was huge. And I met former gang members so that I became known, and the word went out that I was somebody who could help. And eventually people started to tell me things, and we developed a code because people would say, well, something happened to me, and I would say, you mean you have a friend? And many people were very, very smart, and they'd say, yeah, my friend got into trouble. And we were able to communicate. But for me, it's part of relating. It's part of being a human being.
Right. Well, so much of what is happening now, I think you have been a proponent for a long time, is that you're a resource, but the community has to be a resource for itself.
Yes.
So there is this Watts Leadership Institute. Where did that come into your plan, and how did that come into being?
The people who taught me the most were the people in the community. It wasn't coming from reading research studies about gangs. Those were valuable. I'm not denigrating those. But first of all, these were the people that had the real information, the real expertise, and understood how to move things in the community. The leaders were there, but they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the resources, they didn't have any things as basic as wireless connectivity, computers, or the knowledge of how do you go see the mayor? How do you deal with your council member?
How do you get a lawyer?
How do you get a lawyer? How do you, and if you want to have a nonprofit organization to help people, how do you put that together? And so the Watts Leadership Institute was born to truly serve and not to leave. We say 10 years, there is not a doubt in my mind it will be forever. And not that Watts is going to need a leadership institute, but our seeking support to help these leaders will be part of what we do forever.
Are you writing another book right now, by the way?
Yes, I am.
What is?
Well, actually, I'm finishing one and getting ready to start another. I love the book I'm writing. It is about women, prison, and reentry. What happens to women when they're locked up and they come home. And then the next book I will be doing will be about the LAPD Community Safety Partnership, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And the book will be published
next year, Beacon
women.
Press, and it's about women. The tentative title is Coming Home, Women, Prison, and Reentry.
Very light subjects. Sadly, I'm going to have to let you go, but this is incredible. Congratulations on all of this work that you've done over the years, and it's going to be exciting to read and watch what you do in the future.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Jorja. And sadly, that's a wrap on this LA Current.